Stef McLoughlin, welcome to Sports Management Podcast.
Hi, Marcus. Thank you so much for inviting me.
It's great to have you on the show. You are the head of commercial at Glasgow City FC. So, can you tell us a little bit about what that role entails?
So for those of you who may not be aware of Glasgow City, we are the most successful football club in Scotland. So we play in the Scottish Women's Premier League. And we have, we hold a record for the most leagues won, the most cups won, the most European appearances. And the thing that makes Glasgow City super, super special is we are women founded and women owned. And we are completely independent, so we're not linked to a men's side. And yeah, we're building, we'd like to say we're building the future of women's sports because we believe the future of women's sports is independence.
That's very interesting. So, I know you're coming from Lewis FC, who also have a
Yeah.
very big, they were big on equality also, and to have
Mm.
their a very strong female team. So, is that something that is extra dear to you on the equality and on the maybe more on the women's football side?
100%. So I'm not in football for the football per se. Like I'm not, I'm not this is a bit strange. I'm not like a huge football fan. So I'm into football as a vehicle for social change. The clubs that I work for and the clubs I want to be watching, buying their merch as a fan, being part of, are all clubs that are trying to change the world and trying to do good. And for me, obviously, the equality aspect and the feminism around that. Obviously, we know football in general is not the most progressive space when it comes to equality. So I use my space in football basically to try to make it better for women.
That's great. So, how is it to run a female only football club that doesn't have a men's team? Because I think the perception sometimes might be that it's you need to have a men's team to regenerate the
Mm.
revenue in order to support the women's team. But you obviously prove that that's not necessarily the case.
So Laura and Cass, when they first started the team, the infrastructure for football in Scotland or in the UK in general, it was 1998. So there was, going back to that time, there was, it's not like there wasn't actually much there. So they had to kind of like carve their own path, build the club from scratch. And they wanted to build something super, super, super special that was their own, that didn't have to rely on anyone. So going back from that initial story to our commercial department now, um, I mean, yes, I suppose if you have like facilities that are already there or that things that are already being built, I suppose that can make it easier. But even in the history of Glasgow City, Cass and Laura have always said no to being absorbed by a men's club. So when clubs in Scotland started to invest in women's football, they were like a primary target, right? Because it was a built up team that they could very easily just like absorb into their own. And Cass and Laura always said no, because building your own is, there's a lot that is inherited from the men's game that doesn't actually suit the women's game. So, like I always call it building the matriarchy because we're building processes and systems and things that like suit us. And that happens on the pitch and off the pitch as well. So, off the pitch, the way we talk about our club, the way we market ourselves, the way we position ourselves, the lack of bureaucracy as well. So, like, we don't, like with my job at Glasgow City, one of the benefits is I'm not working for a super old traditional legacy brand. If I need something done, then I can just text Laura. It's simple as that. It's building something which doesn't rely on the old traditions of the men's game.
Yeah, I understand that. And the I've talked a lot with the representatives from Lewis FC, from Mercury
Mm,
13, the investment group
yeah,
as well, that focuses a lot on the women's side. And something that has become clear to me is that what you also mentioned now, that the fan base is very different for someone who watches
exactly.
the women's game versus the men's game. So now, as your role as the commercial director, head of commercial, now versus Lewis, when you had a men's team and a women's team, do
Mm.
you have to change your approach somehow when you're selling commercial to a female-only club?
So at Lewis, although we had like a men's side as well, it was very women fronted anyway. So obviously our approach to selling like non-league men's football at Lewis to selling women's football at Lewis was completely different. The type of brands we approached and the size of brand we approached. So for the men's side, we'd approach like more of like the local companies, and then for the women's side, because it was bigger, we'd approach bigger and more aligned, more progressive type companies who care about like female leadership. So the approach is different because it's well, it's a different product really. One, it's a different city. We focus a lot more on women leadership than we do like equality. So it's whatever you're selling for whatever gender, like alignment and sponsorship is incredibly important. So we're approaching different people to what to the sort of brands that we did at Lewis. So I'd say the approach is different. Um, but I'd say the approach is like always a bit different because of alignment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And you have mentioned also that the commercial vision is purpose-driven partnerships. So can you explain a
Mhm.
little bit what you mean with that?
So we actually, I think we were the first women's club to do this. We published our commercial principles around 6 months ago, which was a document which anyone can Google and read online. It was a document which outlined exactly who we want to be working with. So we want to be working with brands that are making change, that are progressive, that care about the same things we do, that want to champion women and girls, that want to change, basically want to change the world with us. So, we don't think of sponsorship as being, oh, here's our shirt, stick your logo on. We think of partnerships where we're thinking about what we want to do together and how we're going to create it. So we signed, for instance, with Button Up Box not too long ago, who are a subscription dog food brand. So we haven't. The partnership is very very new. So we've only done like one small activation so far. But the alignment there is we want to be creating very very inclusive environments within our stadium. So one of the ways we do that is we are dog friendly. So we're going to be working on growing the women's game together via trying to get more dogs in stadium and more dog fans. So yeah, so that's kind of like, they care about all of the things we care about when it comes to our values, but then there's that alignment because, we even do dog season tickets. So yeah, so we can, we'll be having lots of fun together in the next few months.
Yeah, and that's a funny example, right? To go, outside of the norm, what another football
Mm,
club might have done. And I spoke to, I think it was Victoria Kojevina from Mercury 13, and she
yeah.
was mentioning like, not just offering beer. Can you offer like other types of drinks? Could you offer like, pumpkin lattes or, just something
Mm,
different to break the norm? So I think that's really interesting. And I know that some of your values are sustainability, inclusion, women-led brands. How can you find, a true partner who shares these values and not just are using you for, call it greenwashing or these type of
mm.
things?
So we have we have a board basically that is very in line. Obviously, when you're saying no to like so many things and you're saying yes to so many things which are different, you need to be everybody at board level and at staff level need to be really really aligned, right? So like just to give you an example, when I first wrote our commercial principles and I sent them up to the board, normally you send things up to the board and they get back slightly diluted or not as brave, or the messaging has changed. So it's like more normal, I suppose. But like the additions that I got back from our board at Glasgow City were like probably around 15% braver to what I'd originally written. So that's the kind of that's the kind of leadership that we have at Glasgow City. So we do thorough research for everybody we approach, everyone we want to align with, everyone who gets in touch with us, just to make sure that all of the things we say we are doing, they also want to be doing. And then obviously everybody we're working with is checked at board level as well as at staff level. So it's just making sure that everyone we're working with is, like I say, aligned. But yeah, so we're not the easiest sports club to be greenwashing or sports washing with.
I understand, and that's a great thing, right? That you're doing your due diligence on that part.
Mm,
So I noticed that when you came to Glasgow City, you wanted to do a
mhm.
6-month audit to
Yeah.
check on the club's commercial assets. So,
Mm.
what did you discover during this audit? Something surprising, good or bad?
So that's interesting. So, like all cards on the table, and being like perfectly honest, women's football always moves at a much slower pace than people working in it like it to move. So, if you asked me 6 months ago what I'd like to achieve, 6 months down the line, like my list of things was a lot higher probably than what was originally achieved, if that makes sense. And that's mainly down to the slow moving nature of the business. So some things move really, really fast. And then some things are just super slow. But the things that we discovered in our 6 month audit was we've built really, really good solid foundations. Like our commercial offering, the people we're currently working with, all of our, I don't like to call it a pipeline. I like to use the word allies. So all of the people who are currently like in our ecosystem, either like on the outside looking in or already working with us, like we've built in the last 6 months such a strong network of people who have heard the Glasgow City story sometimes for the first time and just love what we're doing or what we're trying to do. So it's a bit of a balance of, out of all the things we found, it's a bit of a balance of like, oh my goodness, we've done so much, like all of our foundations, when you actually lay them out, we've done a lot. But obviously, in people like me in women's football always want things to move like 100% faster than they're actually moving, because it's I did the post this morning where I called the stage we're at in women's football at the moment the messy middle. So we're not a complete finished, polished product. We're still building, and the building bit in the middle is where we need, all of the biggest sponsors, the big media pieces, like all of the people that can really like escalate everything that we're doing. And we always need as many people as possible in that messy middle. And yeah, we're just hoping that all of those allies, can just come fast enough, really.
Yeah, many people compare women's football to men's football, and revenue generation and so forth. Is
Mm.
that something that is stressful? You're trying to chase after that, or are you trying to keep your own lane? And but of course, still you want to move fast, but trying to stay in your own lane.
Yeah, so when it comes to like revenue building and sustainability, like I feel that is another area we shouldn't be comparing to the men's game. Because the men's game is actually terrible at financial sustainability. So even if we look at the men's Premier League, there's like two clubs that sussed financial sustainability out. So it's, you've got the big revenues, but not necessarily sustainability. So, it's in order for us to grow, we need the revenue, we need allies to be, funding campaigns, etc., etc. So all of that is important. But it should be in our own lane. Like we should be, building enough to make sure we've got the right infrastructures, everything that we need for players to have great careers, great times in our clubs. We're building fan bases, we're building like s- slow. I'm about to contradict myself because slow growth with like the right foundations is important. Like you don't want to completely, you don't want to do things that you're not ready to do, but you're still needing revenue and the allies really to be there whilst you do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, talking about revenue, there are several revenue streams, right? You have the
Yeah.
obvious ones, which is ticket sales and whatever you sell in stadium on match day and so forth. But we also have media rights, content,
Mm.
merch, fan subscriptions. Which one are you most bullish on, or which ones do you think that you want to focus on?
So for us, because we're at a point in our journey where we really want to be pushing our story, our DNA, our values. We want to really be, pushing who Glasgow City is. We'd love to do this with via sponsorship. So, when you talk about being bullish, the time that the time that we're dedicating and the resources that we're dedicating with all of those revenue streams, sponsorship is probably the highest commercially at the moment that we're pushing for. And there's benefits to that because we're still building, so anyone who comes along is still building with us. So it's kind of like getting founders in the next stage of our journey. So I kind of see sponsorship as a foundation to like other areas of growth. And the dog example is a great example because it's sponsorship, but we're working on attendances together. So it's kind of like a two in one once it gets going.
Exactly. And do you have any other examples with that you have found a partner that, shares your value and something that you can build on together? The dog example is great, but just if you had another one as well.
So we have one actually, which is coming out on Wednesday, but I suppose I can share with you because this
Mm.
podcast will be out after Wednesday.
Yes.
So we're working with a creative company called Alt. Alt are one of UEFA's creative agencies, so they work on like a lot of. They're very integrated within the football world in general because of their UEFA contracts. They're also based in Glasgow. And they are women owned and led as well. So they're actually investing in us to grow our City Collective, which is our City Collective is a group of um, women led, women founded businesses who are standing alongside us to support the club, but then we also support the businesses in return. So we launched the collective at the same time as our kit launch this season. So they were very integrated with the players and with the club. So this partnership is it's amazing because they're while we've been speaking to them, they've already become fans of Glasgow City. So we're super aligned with our vision for women's football, how we think about women's football, um, what we want to do together. So this partnership will help us build thought leadership and case studies on the business of women's football. And as a result, also Glasgow City gets, expert advice and people helping us to grow our club.
Mm. That's another great example. Thank you for sharing that. And it will be out after Wednesday, so we will not spoil anything prematurely.
You somehow got the exclusive on that, Marcus.
Exactly. Maybe I should release it now on Wednesday just because to have the first. Um, talking about Glasgow City and what you are doing with the club, do you think that Glasgow could play a role as some type of role model club, global ambassador for a female-led club?
So there's a lot of things I think that the club already does that I don't know, like even like I've been at the club 8 months now, but even now, sometimes I see things and go like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, how did I not, something on the football side, for instance, or in departments I'm not super involved in. So I think there is a lot of good that we already do. Um, obviously, like sometimes I think in women's football, we fall in the trap of we're growing really fast or we're super great and like we're a PR company for like ourselves. And then sometimes it's only when we're all in a room together that we're all a bit honest with the things that we are not too great in or the things that we're struggling in. So I think sometimes we fall into a PR trap that makes it slightly stressful for the rest of the industry. So, like I think, yes, we can be an example, especially an example of independent, women led leadership and just just the resilience and the structures that Laura and Cass have built since 1998 to now is, I think, a perfect example for anybody striving for independence. But then I think as an industry, we also need to be honest with the things we can't do and the things we're struggling with. So yeah, so yes is your answer to that, but with caveats.
Yes, but I mean, you can take learnings from something that you're not, maybe mastering either. So if someone looking at you, they can see that these things they did very well, and maybe here
Yeah.
we can take that but tweak it a little bit, for example.
Mm.
So yeah, now you have been 8 months. You said if you're looking
Mm.
forward a couple of years, what would you like to achieve as the head of commercial for Glasgow? And if you're looking a couple of years ahead.
Well, I think it's just, just the obvious ones, Marcus. So, like, Laura has said publicly that in 5 years' time, she wants us to be one of the biggest brands in women's football, in the world, on the planet. So, like, in 2 years, obviously, the obvious things like, a better fan base, a stronger fan base, bigger revenues, some super, super, super aligned core group of brands that are building with us for like the long term. So I think we have a slight issue in the industry at the moment with it's not really an issue because coming in short term I think is fine. We have, you can come in and you can activate and you can, get benefits from the short term, but like we don't as an industry, we have lots of short term planning. So having some long-term partners and long-term plans will just help the whole sustainability issue in women's football slightly better. So yeah, so just like bigger and better than what we are at the moment, Marcus.
I love that. That's what we all want to achieve, right? Become bigger and better than we are now. So, for someone who is not really a football fan, as you said in the beginning, how does
Mm.
one fall into working for not one but two football clubs? And how did your journey begin in the sports industry?
Um, it's a bit of a long story actually. But like I started playing football in 2019 as a complete beginner to football. Like I didn't particularly enjoy football. Playing football for me was like so out of my character and so out of my comfort zone. But I like to do things that are out of my comfort zone. So I tried it out, actually really liked it. Actually felt sorry for my younger self for not having it. I found, a sport that was really meditative. Um, yeah, so I ended up liking football via playing it. And then the World Cup happened in 2019. And I can't say that like I followed it very well. I was just getting like snippets of like women's football at the time in 2019. So it wasn't yet fully internalized in, my life. But like I knew it was there and I was aware of it. And then 2022 happened, well, on home soil. So, I mean, that was absolutely incredible. And I went to, like all that, I live in Brighton. So I went to all of the games in Brighton and then obviously the final at Wembley. And I just became, the more I learned about women's football, the angrier I became about the situation it was in and the lack of infrastructure and the lack of revenues and the 10% media that we get. Like every single day, I learned something new that made me angrier. And then, I worked in education previously, like that was my degree and my career. And I kind of felt I needed a break from that. And Lewis FC was on my doorstep. So I was really lucky. Maggie was the CEO at the time, and she kind of saw the benefit of somebody coming from the world of business that wasn't necessarily football, and what that sort of experience could bring to the game. So I was really lucky that she recognized that. Yeah, and then the rest is kind of history. But I came into football as an angry feminist, and not as a not as somebody who liked the game, basically.
Yeah, but you came with the right intentions, right? You wanted to make a change.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what were some skills you think that you had from the business side that Maggie saw in you that you could help Lewis FC with?
So women's football was, well, we say women's football is essentially a startup. So the company I ran before football, I had just gone through a pandemic with it. So I ran a chain of language schools that were actually quite well established. But the second the pandemic hit, we had to go into startup mode. So all of those, all of the schools, for instance, we had to market and package and put online within like 3 weeks of the pandemic, while you're competing with um, countries in the world that can run um, education courses for like a fraction of the price. So the out of the box thinking that you need to sell products in like a really saturated market where nobody's looking for the product, that is literally women's football at the moment, right? The whole thinking out of this box, packaging it, finding who our clients are, finding who our markets are, um, telling the world while you believe in it. Like I believed in our education programs in the same way I believe in women's football now, and there's impact and purpose to what we're doing then. So I think it's that. I think it's the out of the box thinking. It's the yes, this is football, but how do we make it different, and how do we find the people that are going to align with us?
Hmm. Yeah, I like that. So if someone wants to work in the women's football and business, what's some advice that you would give to them?
Um, it's always I always find this question really hard because I came in via such a random route. Um, like I feel as an industry we still have like lots of volunteers. We're still like quite volunteer based. So and as an industry also, I feel it's a sort of industry where you need to give before you take, if that makes sense. So I would say do as much research as possible, read as much as possible. Don't see things and take them at face value. Form your own opinions. Um, and bring into football what makes you different. And try link it with what you think you can change in the game, whether as a volunteer or a paid member of staff. And also don't be shy to shout out about it either. So like as women, sometimes we're not always very good at like telling people how good we are, or telling people what we've done. So like do work and then tell the world and shout out about it, because that will inspire other people and that will also help you.
Definitely. And I think I would agree with that last statement that you made, that men are they have much easier to, brag about
Mm.
themselves and tell what they have done. Because when I'm trying to find guests for this podcast, it's ridiculously more difficult to get women on than men, because usually women underestimate their like careers in this
Mm.
case, and men might overestimate it sometimes. And the people who reach out to me, it's 100% men that says that
Oh
they
my
want
God,
to be
that's
on the
so
show.
interesting.
And I'm trying to keep some type of I'm not gonna, it's very difficult to do 50-50. I know that there are some other podcasts that strives for that. I want to come closer, but right now it's I looked through recently and I just seen a lot of men on, and I think that might be one reason. Of course I need to look inside as well, to see what I can do more. But I think one
Mm.
of the reason is the one that you mentioned there, that women are not as keen on banging the drum for their own performance, or what do you say?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
let's hope that this one will inspire more women to take charge and join the podcast and join the women's football industry.
Amazing.
So, has there been any bumps on the road in your career? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Any bumps in my career in football or in general?
It can be in general. I mean, if it was in football, maybe that's or in the football business. But I think we can learn from all of them.
I don't. I've not, like touch wood, like within football, I can't say I've had like any any bumps in general. Um, I'm the sort of person who, like, when I make a mistake or when I fail or when I've not done something right, like, I'm quite honest about it in general, in the same way, I was honest with you just now with, 6 months, and I'm a bit, bit more behind than I would like to be. And I think that generally stops you from having bumps because it's much easier when you're an open book, when you're open about it, and then, you do that and then you fix it. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Anything else that I haven't asked yet that you would like to mention about yourself or Glasgow?
Um, I think we've covered like, yeah, I think we've covered, I've told you who we are at Glasgow City, I've told you what we're trying to do. Yeah, I think we've covered, I've even given you like secrets coming out this week, Marcus. So
Exactly, we've covered a
we've
lot
covered quite a bit.
for sure. So if someone wants to read up more, they want to become a Glasgow City FC fan, is want to buy a ticket, season ticket, is there a website or somewhere to go?
So all on our website, so glasgowcityfc.com. Obviously, we're all on the usual socials, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on TikTok, on all of the usual things. And we're not just us, women's football in general, and especially independent women's clubs who don't necessarily have um, a legacy brand that you immediately recognize. Like we need allies. So everybody should be buying merch, tickets, whatever, whether it's for Glasgow City or any other women's football club.
That's fantastic. I'd like to end on a networking question. So, who from your network do you think would be a good guest on this podcast? And maybe now it's time to throw some women out there.
Um, oh my goodness, I'm surrounded by like amazing, amazing, amazing women. Um, There's somebody who I met quite recently who's absolutely amazing. It's a woman called Liza who has started a media company called It Sports in Australia. So they're trying to reassess and redefine how media and women's football happens and how we can carve our own way and not rely on like the 10% that we get from traditional media. Her name's Liza Boston. So she's the first person that's come to mind.
That's a good one. Thank you so much. Steph, thank you so much for taking the time to be on Sports Management Podcast.
I've loved chatting to you, Marcus. So thank you so much.